tonight, the Home Secretary has done her best to convince the public that Labour is going to be tough on immigration. Do you believe them? In the Commons earlier today, she announced a number of policies to crack down on the issue, including refugees having to spend 20 years in the country before being able to claim settled status. Housing and weekly allowances will no longer be guaranteed, and those who can work or who have valuable assets, such as jewellery, when they arrive in the UK, will have to contribute towards their costs of living here. But Mahmood also has to convince her colleagues so the government can, of course, get it through the Commons. I have big concerns that we'll see a repeat of the welfare bill here. A massive majority for Labour, but actually a bunch of MPs and foot soldiers who really aren't going along with your swift, sudden change in ideology. Some of their MPs on the backbenchers have called the measures shameful. Moments ago, Shabana Mahmood sat down with our political editor, Christopher Hope. Let's take a listen.
Shabana Mahmood, thank you for joining us for your first interview on GB News. You said something shocking, I thought, in the House of Commons chamber tonight. You addressing a question from a white Lib Dem MP. You said, "I wish I had the privilege of walking around the country and not seeing the division that the issue of migration and asylum system is creating across this country. Unlike him," you said, "unfortunately, I'm the one who's regularly called an effing P word and told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue is of asylum in our country." Are you sick of well-meaning white people not addressing the issue of immigration because they can't walk in your shoes?
Well, look, the point I was making in the chamber and the argument that I will be making all over the country is I can see that this issue is dividing people across our country. It is not an issue just of white people rejecting migration or asylum seekers. I see my own constituents deeply worried about the community tensions and a system that is out of control and is unfair. So the concern about migration is something that is shared by British people of every background and every ethnicity in this country. And I think that that should be acknowledged, because you have to acknowledge what people are thinking. It's wrong to say people feel that way when it's actually true. They are responding to facts. They can see a broken system because the system is in fact broken as well.
GB News viewers watching this, listening to this, will be frustrated. You're not saying numbers will come down. You hope they will. You can't say it.
Look, I know it's a low trust environment, right? I know that people will say that we've heard all of this before. I get that. I know there's a lot of cynicism. That it's justified. So I'm not telling your viewers that they are wrong to feel or think as they do. Just judge us on our record.
Well, joining me now is Reform UK Councillor Laila Cunningham. Laila, I guess it looks like that Labour's been looking at the polls for the past 10 months, seeing Reform storming by a wide margin, and thought, maybe we need to do something about this. Do you have much confidence that they will succeed in their plans that Mahmood announced today?
No, I don't actually, Ben, because if you really look at the plans, she's basically saying that if you do arrive here illegally on a boat, we're going to reward you with a 2-year fully welcome, fully supported, all-inclusive stay. I mean, that's not a deterrent, that's an incentive. A guaranteed 2-year stay for anyone who comes on a boat. It's an open invitation. And then she says, oh, we'll keep you and we'll only remove you once your country's safe. I mean, come on, you and I know that Afghanistan is not going to be safe in our lifetime, and they know it. They're not really coming for settlement. They're coming for arrival. Entry is the main point. And they know that in 2 years, they'll fight it under some ECHR claim. For me, it's a bit of virtue signalling. And yeah. Go on.
So, sorry to interject, there's a bit of a delay. I guess in her defence, just playing devil's advocate here, Mahmood was saying in Parliament today that the sort of standard, the level of what's needed to define a safe country is going to be a lot lower than it was. For example, that she was reeling off some instances where we wouldn't send people back because the prison cells they would potentially end up in whatever country it was, were too small compared to UK standards. And she was saying, well, this is an absolute joke. Of course, we're going to scrap that rule. So they are, I guess, trying to do something to enforce deportations.
But Ben, I feel they take us for fools because, for instance, the 3 countries that she said that she would crack down on visas if they don't take returns, I think it was Angola, Congo and DRC, only a handful of people have arrived on boat. Those are not the countries which we're worried about. There are other countries that she went for a soft target, because if she goes for the hard target, she's going to fail. I mean, we have an over 80% success rate for people who claim asylum from Eritrea or Ethiopia. And then she said she wants to offer community sponsorship. to have communities more engaged. But that worries me, because in places like Rotherham or Rochdale, those communities that protected the rapists, will they be able to sponsor community sponsorship? So there's a lot of questions for me. I'd like to see actually her to get a returns agreement with Pakistan to deal with the rape gangs, but of course she does have a political base to protect, so I haven't seen that yet. She also said that she's not going to guarantee housing or financial support. Really, what are they going to do? Are they going to live on the streets? Are they going to become the council's problem? It's not thought through, and I want illegal entry. Reform wants illegal entry into this country to stop being decriminalised and to be treated as a crime. And if you enter this country illegally, you cannot claim asylum. It's what any serious country does.
Yeah, and also you made a point there which I do agree with about kind of, I guess it's low-hanging fruit. Labour have been banging on about 50,000 deportations since they took power, but it's, and I'll say it again, I'll repeat myself like a broken record, it's the Vietnamese nail bar workers, the sweet little women who, okay, granted, they shouldn't be here in the first place, but they're causing no harm. The people are concerned about the kind of third worlders who come from cultures totally alien to ours, who have different standards of objectivity towards women, children, so on and so on. Laila, whilst I've got you and before I let you go, do you know much about this big announcement tomorrow from Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef about foreign nationals who must bear the brunt of filling the black hole in Britain's finances? Do you know much about that?
I don't, but the problem is that we are paying a lot. Taxpayers are paying a lot for foreign nationals who can't pay their way because we've imported foreign cheap labour who import with them low wages and can't themselves. And I think it will address that, but I don't know the full details. We'll have to wait and see.
No, it's fine. There are scant details around. I think it's breaking in the Times. It says that Farage will announce £25 billion worth of cuts, and they plan to strip EU nationals of benefits and cutting foreign aid as well. And this would avoid, they say, the need for tax rises in the budget. So I guess, we'll see what happens with that. Laila, thank you for your time and staying up at this hour. So just briefly, what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's important. We are giving 13 billion in foreign green aid while they're talking about raising taxes on working people. I mean, I don't want to give foreign green aid 13 billion. That's a huge amount. And all they're talking about tax rises. This government never talks about cuts. And I think it's about time a government spoke about foreign aid cuts. We have to take care of our own first.
Yeah, indeed. Laila, thank you very much. And good point as well. They're banging about a black hole. You've got 13 billion, I was about to say million, it's billion for foreign aid in African countries. You've got 22 billion on a carbon capture scheme that even green zealots and climate crisis advocates don't like. We can go on and on. Public sector pay rises. Laila, thank you. We'll catch up soon. Appreciate your company. Let's get the take now of Freddie Hayward, the US correspondent at the New Statesman, who joins me live in our Washington studio. Freddie, good evening. Thanks for your company. Welcome along. First of all, what's your thoughts on these announcements today? I mean, it is kind of reform-esque, but my concern is that they'll struggle to get it through Parliament. We saw what happened with the welfare bill. Rumours tonight that backbenchers are already swirling and shouting at the clouds in anger.
Right, the New Statesman has been tracking this throughout the day. We've already got 18 names on our list. This is obviously going to isolate the left of the party. I think the gamble that Shabana Mahmood and Number 10 is making essentially is that this is where the public is. This is what the public wants. We've seen that in elections throughout the past decade or so. It was obviously an integral part of Brexit and why people voted, the broader issue of immigration, that is. But there's a question of party management now. And I think given that Keir Starmer is in a very tricky position, he is going to face a lot of criticism out in the open, not just behind the scenes, not just people saying to Number 10 that we don't like this policy, but actually going out there onto the news and questioning what he's doing. So he's isolating the party, but they obviously think, Number 10 and Shabana Mahmood, that they have to deal with the immigration issue before the next election. Otherwise, as the polls show, reform seem likely to get in. Has
Shabana Mahmood particularly got a sort of a trust problem, an image problem? Because it was only years ago she was filmed on the beaches of Lesbos, the Greek island, which was the gateway to the migrant crisis into Europe, helping migrants onto the shores from dinghies. In 2018, I think she called for an amnesty of all illegal workers in the UK. And suddenly, just a few years later, because they're tanking in the polls, she's now channeling the spirit of Nigel Farage. I mean, do you think the electorate buy that?
I think Labour have a broader image problem.
Yeah.
We didn't hear this during the general election campaign. Remember back then it was all about smashing the gangs. It wasn't really about overhauling the asylum system in general, and it was definitely not about trying to tweak the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, which is exactly what Shabana Mahmood is now promising. They're not saying they're going to leave the ECHR, but they're going to try and change some of the ways in which articles like Article 8 is applied in the UK. So that is a huge shift. I mean, maybe it would have been better for Labour to have this intellectual conversation to convince voters before the election to say, well, actually, we've thought this through, we stand on these principles, this is why reform and Nigel is wrong, and this is what we believe in. Instead, they're playing catch-up, and that's been a theme of this government so far.
Yeah, and they did have 14 years to prepare themselves as well, right? Let's just take a quick look at the front page of the Daily Mirror, if you've got it. Keir Starmer pledging tonight, Freddie, to stand the course, go the distance, and he'll be the leader at the next election. I guess he's saying the next election will be in, 28? Do you think he'll survive?
Well, let's see. I mean, I think if you have to say it, then that's a bad sign in itself, isn't it? I mean, to take a front page and say that to try and quell these rumours of dissent. I think some people are looking at Wes Streeting, of course. They're also looking at Andy Burnham in Manchester. Some other names that come up include Shabana Mahmood herself. So when this talk starts, when the momentum builds, as Boris Johnson and all those former Conservative Prime Ministers know, then it's quite hard to stop. And I think the key for the government now is to essentially deliver on the promises, to increase their support within the polls, to address issues like immigration, but also to look at things like economic inequality, which we don't hear so much about.
So logistically, how would a leadership challenge manifest? Would they wait? I mean, there was talk that Wes Streeting was going to be doing it around the budget, wait for the budget to be delivered, total flop, and then he'd make a move then. But I mean, could it come at it's about to call it the midterm elections, I've been in DC too, in the council elections next year, the local council elections?
That's how people are talking. They need around 80 signatures. It's actually quite hard. It's much harder than the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party, you can do it all in secret, and it's much easier to get rid of a Prime Minister. It's harder in Labour. But let's see, we don't yet know. The signs are looking bad, and as I said, they need to start delivering on their promises, and Keir Starmer needs to get some grip of the narrative. He's not been able to do that. Shabana Mahmood, I think, is actually probably helping the government with this announcement, because this shifts them to where the public and voters are. We've seen for a very long time that this is a top issue for them, and the government haven't done enough yet to deal with it.
And also, Freddie, I was chatting to you off air just before the show. I was asking whether you think, well, I've got this theory, right, and viewers probably know it by now, that I think we're maybe 3, 4, 5 years behind the US politically, sort of culturally as well. Do you think we'll get to a point in the UK where we are now in America, where, I mean, 0 illegal immigration releases in the US since President Trump took power? I think deportations are at something like 1.5 million, 600,000 of which were forced deportations. Do you think we'll ever end up in the UK with a really sort of aggressive mass deportation policy, as you find now in the US?
Well, I mean, there's a great connection between the UK and the US, and we're increasingly absorbing their politics as it comes across the Atlantic, and that's partly because of the internet and partly for other reasons. But I think this is Labour's task, isn't it? Is to prevent the rise of someone like Trump. Nigel Farage and Donald Trump have their differences, but they represent a similar type of politics, which is a form of right-wing populism, and Labour clearly need to do more to address the rise of this movement. I mean, there's a sense of inevitability about it now, and they're trying to resist this tide, and this is, I think, how we should see today's announcement.
I may be or may not be going on an ICE raid later on this week. How do you think the ICE raids and the way really they're sort of handling themselves are going down with Republican voters, those who did vote for President Trump?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that the immigration issue has actually left the political scene in the US a lot. I think lots of people are very upset about the brutality of some of the raids. I think people are watching some US citizens get deported or be arrested or be harassed, or those landscapers or whoever it might be who are just trying to work hard. I think that turns them off. I mean, of course, as Bernie Sanders himself has said, that the influx during Biden's administration was very detrimental to the Democrats. That was not planned. That was not good for anyone. That was not part of an ordered system. And Bernie Sanders has made this point. But now this is, again, not part of an ordered judicial system where you have masked men going door to door without much oversight. That seems to be a problem too.
I guess, though, in their defence, they say they are masked because they're going to get doxxed. They're at risk of attacks from the left.
I think that's a very generous interpretation of why they do it.
Why would they be masked then?
I think it's much more to do with the aesthetic, and it's much more about intimidation.
It's scary.
Yeah, I think that's been a clear policy of the administration, has to implement an immigration system based on intimidation to both deter people coming, but also to force them to leave. And that's how I see it.
One similar proposal from Mahmood today was, of course, I mean we do it already, but paying people to leave the UK. I think a figure of up to £3,000 was quoted, which seems quite generous compared to the US. I think there was an advert here with Kristi Noem saying we'll give you $1,000 to self-deport. I mean, is that going to fly in the UK? $3,000 per person to leave? Sounds like quite a lot of money.
I think the government's argument is that essentially this is a much cheaper way to get people who don't have a right to be in the UK to leave. Yeah. And I think if they make that case, that's quite a rational position to hold.
Freddie, thank you for your company. Really appreciate it. And yeah, do join us again soon. Thank you, mate.